concern specific to this case, they may present evidence from the Sheriff's Department by affidavit, declaration, exhibit, or testimony. This order does not limit the Sheriff's Department's ability to coordinate with the court or otherwise act as authorized by law. Turning to the motion to appear in civilian clothing and without physical restraints. The parties agree that during trial, a defendant has a right to appear in civilian clothing and that any restraints must be concealed from the jury. Mr. Robinson now seeks to extend those rights to all pretrial proceedings. The court considered each request separately. In relation to request to appear in civilian clothing, Mr. Robinson asks to appear in civilian clothing at all pretrial hearings. He argues that the extensive media coverage of this case creates a real risk of prejudice if the public and potential jurors repeatedly see him in jail attire. The state, the Sheriff's Department, and the court security director opposed the request, arguing that jail clothing assists with safety and identification. The court has balanced these competing concerns. The case has attracted extraordinary public and media attention. Images of Mr. Robinson in jail clothing are likely to circulate widely and influence prospective jurors. Given the scale of that publicity, the risk of prejudice is significant. However, Mr. Robinson's, let me see here. As previously stated, Mr. Robinson sits before this court presumed innocent, and that presumption remains unless and until each element of every offense charged against him is proved beyond a reasonable doubt. To date, this has not occurred, and the presumption of innocence remains. Balancing these factors, the court finds that Mr. Robinson's right to the presumption of innocence outweighs the minimal inconvenience of permitting civilian attire, and Mr. Robinson shall be dressed as one who is presumed innocent. Accordingly, the defendant's request to appear in civilian clothing for all pretrial proceedings is granted. Defense counsel is directed to coordinate with the jail to ensure that this order is implemented, and the court further orders that if the clothing be provided 72 hours prior to any hearing. To the second request to appear without physical restraints, Mr. Robinson also requests to appear unrestrained during pretrial proceedings. He argues that visible restraints would prejudice potential jurors, undermine his dignity, and interfere with his ability to communicate with counsel. Rule 3-14 sub 9C of the Utah Rules of Judicial Administration requires that all in-custody defendants be restrained unless otherwise ordered by the court. The court recognizes that Mr. Robinson has no criminal history and no record of misconduct while in custody. However, the charges he faces are extraordinarily serious, carrying potential penalties of life imprisonment or death. The safety of Mr. Robinson, the attorneys, court staff, and the public must remain the court's highest priority. The emotional nature of these proceedings also raise the risk of disruption. Given these factors, the defendant's request to appear without restraint is denied. The court directs the Sheriff's Department to conduct an individualized assessment and use the least restrictive restraints necessary to maintain safety. If those restraints impede the defendant's ability to communicate with counsel or take notes, counsel may renew the motion. I wish now to also address the decorum and media restrictions. To mitigate any potential prejudice, the court will amend its standing decorum order. The media will be prohibited from photographing or visually recording Mr. Robinson's restraints and from photographing or recording him while entering, exiting, or standing in the courtroom. In making this amendment, the court has considered the factors in Rule 4-401.01 sub 2. This is a high-profile case with strong public interest. Restricting the recording of restraints strikes the proper balance between Mr. Robinson's right to a fair proceeding and the public's right to access and transparency. In conclusion, the court orders as follows. Defendant's motion to strike the sheriff's response is granted. Defendant's motion to appear in civilian clothing is granted. Defendant's motion to appear without restraints is denied. The standing decorum order will be amended to prohibit any visual recording or photography of the defendant's restraints or of the defendant entering or exiting the courtroom. This constitutes the order of the court, and a written order and ruling will be published shortly. Both defense and prosecution have stipulated to vacate the October 30th hearing. Additional time is needed to complete discovery and to file motions addressing whether non-evidentiary hearings should be conducted virtually, whether to impose any blanket restrictions on cameras in the courtroom, and any other motions that may arise. This matter is set to return before the court on January 16th, 2026 at 1 p.m. and again on January 30th, 2026 at 1 p.m. Both hearings will be heard and held in person with Mr. Robinson present to address these issues. And that concludes the order of this court. Counsel, thank you for being here. Mr. Robinson, we'll see you on January 16th and January 30th at 1 p.m. Court is now in recess.
Thank you.